Today on The Big Debate, is the curriculum fit for the 21st century? Hello and welcome to the programme. What's the point of the curriculum? Is it more important to provide a foundation of knowledge or to teach analytical skills? In this online age, is there any point in spending so much time learning facts when you could be learning about citizenship or relationships or how to manage an overdraft? These questions and many like them have been occupying government and experts as we try to remake the curriculum for the 21st century. With changes such as the new Key Stage 3 curriculum, diplomas and the outcome of the primary review, schools are facing a major shake-up in both what they teach and how they teach it. But are these changes going to help deliver the education that's needed for modern Britain? Today on The Big Debate, we're in northwest London at the Capital City Academy, itself a product of big change in recent years, the academy system and its freedom to diverge a bit from the national curriculum. On our panel are Philip O'Hear, Principal of the Capital City Academy, Mick Waters, Director of Curriculum at the QCA, Professor Alan Smithers, Director of Buckingham University's Centre for Education and Employment Research, Saira Khan, perhaps best known as the runner-up in the first series of The Apprentice, now a TV presenter and entrepreneur in her own right, and Matthew Taylor, Chief Executive of the Royal Society for the Encouragement of Arts, Manufactures and Commerce, the RSA. And in our audience, a range of experts, business people, teachers, parents and pupils, all ready for today's Big Debate. So let's begin by getting a quick response from our panel to a fairly simple question. What is the point of a curriculum? Philip?
I believe a curriculum should be preparing young people with the personal qualities needed for life in a liberal democracy and an increasingly technological future. So it's about knowledge, understanding and competencies needed to understand and operate in the world.
Mick?
The curriculum should inspire, it should challenge, it should help youngsters to understand the value of learning to themselves and to society. And we should see the curriculum as not just the national curriculum, but the entire planned learning experience, the lessons, the events, the routines, and what youngsters do after and beyond school.
Alan?
We need a way of setting out what no child should miss out on. Now, it's very important how we go about that. Over the past 20 years, it's all got very complicated. You need to concentrate actually on the essentials. So I think no one would disagree that young children need to be taught how to handle words and numbers properly. What words, what numbers, to what level to be tested. Just focusing on the essentials is difficult enough. If you try and embrace the whole curriculum, it gets out of hand, as it has done, I think.
Saira Khan?
I think the curriculum should allow children to give access to subjects that will develop their understanding of the world they live in, give them skills for work, and also give them the will to learn throughout their life. You know, learning shouldn't just finish at school. You develop yourself for life throughout your lifetime, really.
And Matthew Taylor?
I think a curriculum should give young people the knowledge, the skills, competences, self-confidence they need, but it should also be as flexible as possible to allow those who deliver it to be creative. It should engage young people, and most of all, it should encourage people to love learning and want to carry on learning.
OK, well, thank you for that. So differing viewpoints on the point of a curriculum, and with so much pressure on schools to equip pupils for modern life, it's perhaps no surprise that the curriculum is facing change. Knowledge has never been more easily available. Our lives are dominated by information and technology that's evolving quicker than ever. So how can we ensure our education system keeps up with the 21st century student? Just what is the key to engaging them and encouraging them to learn? Our national curriculum has come a long way since it was introduced in 1988 under Margaret Thatcher. For more than 20 years it's been praised, criticised and subjected to countless reviews. But which is the correct version? The former Director of Inspection at Ofsted, Sir Jim Rose, says more needs to be done in primary schools. His idea of a curriculum built around 6 areas of learning aims to encourage cross-curricular teaching. But will it yield positive results? or merely complicate what some might call an already overcrowded curriculum. After last summer's marking blunder, secondary school students are now subject to less testing. SATs for 14-year-olds have been abolished, and they now have the option of doing a diploma. But will the qualification, which promises to offer a more practical, hands-on way of gaining skills, be enough to equip students for the outside world? And in an age where knowledge can be acquired at the click of a mouse, should the skills we teach be more about finding, analysing and presenting information in the correct way, and less about memorising and working under exam conditions? Or do we risk ending up with a future generation who lack an understanding of the basics? Matthew Taylor, let's begin with you. Your organisation, the RSA, has developed recently its own ethos of education. You've even set up an academy yourselves. What do you believe you're delivering that the curriculum doesn't? What's different?
Well, we have a curriculum called Opening Minds that has now been taken up by over 200 schools, and we sponsor an academy to see if we can extend that from Key Stage 3, where it's normally focused right through the school. I think at the heart of Opening Minds is the idea that young people should acquire knowledge through competencies, through the development of the kinds of cross-cutting skills which they need in all subjects. So things like communication, teamworking, research, those kinds of competencies. It doesn't mean you don't learn knowledge, but you learn knowledge through developing those cross-cutting competencies, increasingly the kinds of things which employers say they want. And I think the other thing about Opening Minds as an approach is it's one which seeks to engage learners themselves in understanding the learning process and feeling that they are partners in that learning process. And my observation about young people now is that they don't want learning done to them. They want to feel that learning is something which they understand and they're part of. And approaches like Opening Minds start from that principle.
So it's not handing down tomes and telling people to learn it. It's more about skills.
You know, you learn the knowledge, but you learn the knowledge more in the context of using it to solve problems, in the context of learning cross-cutting skills, but as I say, in a more discursive way, so that learners get to understand why it is they're acquiring that knowledge and how it can be applied.
Alan, are they on the right lines?
I don't think so. You have to say, why do you go to school anyway? Why is it reasonable to require people to be there? Well, it's to enable them to make sense of really what is something rather extraordinary, which is being on this small planet for 70 years. Now, over time, we've worked out various ways of making sense of the world. You know, what we accept as true and what we don't accept as true. Science, history, mathematics, each has their own way of establishing the truth. Now, that is what we, I think, want to pass on to future generations, the way we make sense of the world. So really the curriculum in the secondary school at least needs to be organised around the subjects. All the sorts of things that Matthew is wanting to achieve can be achieved through the subjects, but unless you have something firmly grounded in what we need to know about living a life, then it won't work.
Let's go to the audience and find out what employers want. Fiona Murray is from the CBI. Which side of this debate are you?
We very much feel that young people need transferable skills, so they need those employability skills, those literacy and numeracy skills, so that they can get on in life and in the coming year get into a very competitive labour market.
So it's actually basic skills that are the problem for you?
Basic skills are essential to enter the labour market, and too few young people actually have them.
OK, Katie Ivans, from the Campaign for Real Education.
I'm with Professor Smithers on this. I think it's absolutely essential that children learn subjects. We are fortunate in having subjects come down to us over many years, and we're talking about what we need in the 21st century. I believe that not only are we going to need these subjects for the 21st century, we're going to need them for the 22nd and probably the 23rd century. There are bodies of knowledge that have built up over time, and they do, as Professor Smith has said, they are contained in subjects that we call history, geography, English, science. It's absolutely crucial that children learn, first of all, the basics of these, and that they are developed, first of all, through primary school, by the way. So I'm not happy about what Professor Rose is proposing, and certainly they should be developed in a very great way through secondary school, so that they will have their own aspirations and their own ambitions, and they will be fit to pursue those ambitions.
Filippo here, I mean, is this a false choice? I mean, every school should do both, shouldn't it?
That was exactly what I was going to say. you teach competencies through subjects, you teach subjects through competencies. We are using an opening minds approach in Year 7 for part of the week. We think that's a very important way of bridging primary and secondary, but also establishing some key competencies in our school for our learners that they will then use across the whole of their curriculum. But I think a really important part of the secondary school curriculum is learning history from somebody who's passionate about history and becoming a competent historian. How far you continue that, when you allow children to specialise, are all the very difficult decisions that we wrestle with all the time. But I think part of what we must keep is a subject-based curriculum, but not at the expense of those competencies. And in the work we've done with our gifted and talented students here, they certainly have experienced a very fragmented curriculum where subjects aren't joined up. So I think the foundation of competencies is going to be a very important part of how we develop our curriculum here.
Do you want to come back, Alan Smithers?
Yeah, I mean, the problem I have with skills and competences...
Sorry, I wasn't talking about skills. I think skills are quite a narrow thing. Competencies are about dispositions, about ways of thinking, about attitudes, as well as about skills. And they seem to me to be profoundly the things that industry needs. And if we're going to create employable future learners, they need to have these emotional as well as skill-based dispositions developed.
I was going to say skills and competences. And the trouble I have with them is that they have a now you see it, now you don't quality. I mean, if someone knows how to discover about the world scientifically or historically, and they accumulate a body of knowledge, you can see that it's actually happening. But when I see skills and competences taught in schools, it tends to be a project, and various things are done, and then somebody comes in and says, I discern that these skills and competences have been developed. Really, this is a rather vague way of going about it. Now, I agree that literacy and numeracy are fundamental. Whether we call them subjects or skills, I don't really mind. Unless people can handle words and numbers properly, they don't have the start in life that we want everybody to have. I would just say, though, let me just round off something. Life is about much more than employability. You're wanting to open up the possibility of living a life, one of which is working, but that isn't the only aspect.
Okay,
so if you define it totally in terms of employability, you're narrowing down the experience far too far.
Okay.
But let's take this point that you made about you know, the kind of ephemeral nature of competencies. In my experience, when people acquire little tiny nuggets of knowledge in a narrow subject base without understanding any possible relevance of that, the likelihood of them retaining it is very, very low. I mean, I think, again, I don't know anecdotal, but I think of my own children, I ask them how much they can remember of the knowledge they were taught in a traditional curriculum in Year 7 and Year 8, now they're in Year 10 and Year 11. It's minuscule, because it wasn't, as it were, on a washing line. It wasn't associated for them with problem solving. They didn't acquire a set of skills which they felt they could use in the world. They got little nuggets of knowledge, they remembered them for 3 or 4 days. Because they were of no use, they then chucked them out.
I want to hear from some of the students in our audience. What I kind of want to know is, do you think you spend too much time learning things? When you know, things that you can easily look up on a computer? Yes.
Yes, I agree with that. I think that we need both the physical and the mental education system. We need both the literacy and the other subjects, the core subjects. We need those, as well as we need to be prepared for the future life, as in for the jobs and all that. I think we need both of the parts, as both they were saying, and if we only get one part, we will only be able to do. I don't think we'll be able to use it in future life as well as if we were taught both the parts.
Sarah Khan, do you think too much time is spent trying to learn things or memorise things effectively that these days you can get very, very easily on the end of a computer?
I haven't been in school, so I don't know how much time they actually, for ages, haven't been in school. So I don't know how much time they do spend doing that. However, I think it's a very important skill to have. I live in the 21st century. I'm a business person. I meet young people all the time. I've also managed young people who've come out from university or be at school, and I have to say I am absolutely appalled at the level of basic literacy and numeracy skills that they have, and that's really disappointing. I'm all for learning the core subjects. I believe you should learn English. I think you should definitely learn maths. You definitely should learn science. You should learn whatever you want to learn. However, the way it's delivered has got to change. You know, we live in a world of modern technology. Writing an essay for, writing an essay about Shakespearean plays is very different to writing an email to a prospective employer. They are different skill sets, and you do have to learn how to do both. But you also need to know how to spell in a letter. I can't believe the basic errors that are sent to us from young people. They don't know how to spell, and they've got spell check on the computer.
Yes.
I spent the last time on a project where I was part of a team of students who organised our own business, and we went to a market with our business to sell products, and that experience was so amazing. And if we can open that, we could open that for more year groups, so lower year groups, because I'm in sixth form, and if we can open that for lower year groups, for them to have that experience of what it is like to run a business, like develop their entrepreneurial skills, then that would be more beneficial, and they'll also learn how to write letters, as you said, Sarah. Learn how to write letters and emails, because we had to do that as well, right up to businesses, and we had to do lots of research. So that helped with on the practical side, and that also helped with our researching skills as well.
Mick, can I just come to you lastly? I mean, and I just wonder if you find it depressing in a way, this debate, because what you quite often get is a lot of concentration on basic skills, literacy, numeracy, and we all kind of take it for granted that that's what we want to achieve in the education system. Or we get, you know, and you need to be ready for the world of business. You don't get an awful lot of talk about thirst for knowledge, you know, in between, you know, intellectual endeavour, you know, history, geography, politics, you know, science, all of those kinds of things, and that's what you've got to concentrate on in terms of the curriculum.
We've got to concentrate on all of it, and subjects are important aspects of learning. They help us to organise knowledge, people understand them, they know where they came from, and they know where they lead, though it is very complicated as subjects divide into smaller subsections and more specialism. We want youngsters to engage with it, which is why we have to endlessly find examples of opportunities for youngsters to see why learning matters. And that's why some of the aspects of competence are really important. What employers need in the future is an important aspect of growing up, as is the youngster understanding just what they've got to cope with in the world of adult life. Coping with their own teenage life is a massive challenge for many youngsters. And somehow we've got to make the curriculum be all things to all people. We do want scholarship. We want youngsters going into a subject in depth, seeing the joy of the subject, seeing the beauty of it, seeing the effect it can have on them. But we also want youngsters to become competent and realise how important it is to put an email right, because they're trying to affect the audience that they're writing to, or that they're performing for, they're dancing for, that they're playing music for. They're trying to persuade people and helping things to move forward. And that's why the Opening Minds programme and programmes like that do have an impact on young people. They can see the importance of what they're doing and where it's going. The work with businesses and employers that many places now undertake in school really does show youngsters ways forward that make sense in their lives. And it's the link between the two, not the separation, that we should be exploring.
OK, we're going to move on, but for now, thank you very much indeed. Well, there's already been a lot of change over the last few months. We saw the scrapping of Key Stage 3 testing. We've got curriculum changes, diplomas, and of course, the primary review that is set to have a huge impact. So let's concentrate on primary education for a moment. Chris Sluck, now, you're the head of a primary school in Enfield. How do you feel about the primary curriculum and its suitability right now?
Well, I think the primary curriculum for the 21st century has really got to deliver two things. One is a balance between that subject and competency argument, which we've just sort of had. And definitely we need those competencies. We need to bear in mind that the children in primary school are not going to leave to the world of work until 10 years, 14 years. And if we just look back over the last 12 months, just the amazing changes that happen. If we imagine what the world is going to look like in 14 years, it's quite clear we have to prepare children to be active learners in their world so that they can cope.
This debate we've been going on about discrete subjects versus
Absolutely,
competencies is, you know, even comes down to 5- and 6-year-olds.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a key one that's there. But nobody's suggesting in primary school, and by the way, that subjects are going to disappear. I can't believe there's many primary schools that are going to give up on literacy and numeracy. But the recommendations in the Rose Review, I think, of 6 areas of learning are a very welcome rebalancing of the curriculum. And linked to that is the second issue of flexibility, which has slightly been hinted at here, because what we need to do in the 21st century is personalise the curriculum, actually make it meet the child rather than the child meet the curriculum. And in order to do that, we need some of those flexibilities. And I think the Rose Review and the suggestions in there will provide us with some of those flexibilities.
Katie Ivans, you against flexibility and personalised learning?
No, not this sort of flexibility. No. What is being proposed here is that Jim Rose says that I think it's all stripped down to 2 subjects, literacy and numeracy, and everything else is negotiable, I think. Children do actually need I think so. I think it's areas of learning, yes. And children do actually need to learn. They need to begin to be taught history. They need to begin to be taught geography. They certainly need to begin to be taught science. If they're very fortunate, they might have a school which could start to teach them a foreign language. They need all this before they go into secondary school, when they should be good and ready to learn the subjects in a much more expanded and much more developed way. So I think that Jim Rose's proposals, which I think are very unfortunate, given that he's tried to secure literacy for our children, and I have to say I praise Jim Rose for this, but I think that his proposals are very retrograde proposals and could be very damaging for children.
You wanting to come back?
Absolutely. That's a complete caricature of what actually the primary review is saying. It's saying nothing even like that. Jim Rose is absolutely clear that there needs to be a balance between subjects and cross-curricular teaching, and it's a very reasoned and coherent argument. And it needs to be said that, actually, if you read it very carefully, Jim Rose is also saying, actually, that children need to learn a second language in primary school. So your issue about that is very, very clear in the review itself.
Matthew Taylor.
I mean, I always find it charming that people who campaign for real education seem to have difficulties themselves comprehending texts, but I think that this is the point here is how do young people, no one's saying that children shouldn't learn about history, for example, but is it best to learn about history in a lesson called a history lesson, or is it, for example, fantastic to do a project about where you live, which is about the people who live there, the work that goes on there, and you get into the history of the area through that way, because you're actually trying to develop a full understanding and appreciation of where you are. Now, you know, we all want to teach history. The question is, how do you package it up? And the other point I think is very important to make briefly is that teaching knowledge through competencies and subject through competence is very demanding. We find in opening mind schools, for example, that teachers find it much tougher than just standing up at the front of a class and delivering the national curriculum the conventional way. And that's partly what went wrong with these kinds of ways of doing it in previous times. It was done in a very sloppy way. So let's not think that a competencies-based approach is somehow letting teachers off the hook. It is actually a much more demanding way of teaching if it's done properly.
Alan Smithers.
I mean, from where I sit, Jim Rose made a very brave attempt at trying to specify without specifying. The problem he confronted was there was too much in the primary curriculum. And so he's come up with these areas of experience that could mean something or nothing. This is the kind of problem you get into if you try and set out the whole curriculum. So I don't think there's any doubt at all that learning how to handle words and numbers, learning how to behave and be a responsible member of society are the vital components of primary education. Beyond that, you need to organise it for the particular circumstances, the particular children. You need to trust the professional competence of the teachers.
Okay.
So concentrate on the essentials, and then, which are hard enough themselves, and then build out.
Philip.
Well, I think it's clearly absolutely essential that primary education helps children learn to read and use number effectively and write. I mean, those things are absolutely critical. They're the foundation of everything. But I think this whole discussion is missing 2 really important things. First of all, any curriculum is a selection. subjects versus competences is nonsense. You're selecting from a subject. You do world history, modern history, ancient history. It's all a selection. What schools have to do, or the national curriculum has to do, is make the best selection possible. That's the first point. The second thing is the curriculum is not just what happens in lessons. The curriculum is the wider life of the whole school. And many of the things we're talking about are actually delivered through the quality of the relationships and the learning and the mixture of the two in the whole school. And it's the competence approach that helps you join those up. Okay. I'm absolutely for subjects, but in a context where children are developed as whole people, and I think we've missed all that.
OK, thank you. We're going to take a short break now, but still to come on the big debate, we'll take a look at the classroom of the future and what it means for the curriculum. Welcome back to the big debate. Paperless classrooms, handing homework in online, just a few of the changes that teachers may have to adapt to as the internet revolution brings ever bigger changes to our schools. But these changes may not be so very far away, as Cornwallis School in Kent demonstrates. This might look like an ICT lesson, but these pupils are in a humanities class, learning about history using modern technology. These tablets contain everything needed for the lesson, an online textbook, the World Wide Web, and space for pupils to store their work when they've finished.
We've got to teach students how to research on the internet, how to process that information and then come up with something that is their own work. And that's part of a taught process that should, that you would do within your lessons.
Cornwallis Academy says it's leading a revolution in learning. The paperless school concept has helped cut costs, and teachers believe the children are more motivated and enthusiastic.
I think it's a lot easier to use than a textbook, because if you don't understand something in the class, you don't have to get up and ask the teacher. You could just type it into a search engine.
You can use the internet to find out facts and things, and if you're doing a PowerPoint, you can find pictures to go with it.
Classroom of the future, technology gone too far, or a necessity for the 21st century pupil? Let's begin with Sarah Mussey. Now, you're from the campaign for the book. Does this alarm you?
Well, it amuses me, actually, because it does sound a bit like a piece for a scene from a novel in the future. What I don't understand, I think, is that why there has to be a competition between technology and the book. Why the book has to be the fall guy, if you like, for a technological system in which education is delivered through ICT. We are living in an age where there are more children reading than ever before. Since the advent of Harry Potter, there's been a reading explosion amongst our youth, and it seems a strange time to me to decide to close the book on it.
Philip, I mean, when online resources are mushrooming, the places you can go to for information are growing by the month for reliable sources of information as well. I mean, doesn't that make curriculum planning harder to take in all these things?
Yes and no, but I mean, fundamental to our work on literacy is promotion of reading of fiction. And there is nothing like the relationship with a book, although it can be an e-book. I've just got an e-book reader. But seriously, all these channels of communication are there. All the internet, multitasking, mobile phones, text messaging. Students are doing these things anyway. And in universities, they're frequently communicating with their lecturers by them. I think we have to embrace these technologies, teach children how to use them sensibly, how to use them well. But the writing of argument, the research and evaluation of evidence are absolutely critical things to develop, because whether they're information sources of the internet or anything else, cutting and pasting won't do. And what we've got to teach children to do is to use these sources of information and the sources of communication well. And I think much more than just getting your work to and from a computer, the real power of IT is supporting communities of learning. And that means embracing all sorts of forms of social networking and turning them into ways that children can actually learn with each other better.
Can I hear from some of the teachers and students as well in the room? And what were you going to say?
Too much time is spent on technology and less writing. Basically, they're not getting the book out. Children are not getting the books out. They're just spending time too much on the internet and on the computer, so homework's not being done really. They say that my child's actually saying I'm doing my homework is on the computer, and I don't know whether he's done it or not.
Yes, what would you say?
I would say it's a good idea to introduce more technology into the classroom, because if a child is spending more time than outside or with their friends on a computer, say like they use it as an excuse. If they can use the computer for their classwork or homework or anything like that.
But you just cut and paste?
Not cut and paste. If they want, it's their decision. But what I think is that it will encourage them to do their homework, or, for example, in their class, some students are more able than the others.
The gentleman on the end there, yeah.
Hi there. I feel a bit out of place because it's a room full of academics. Really, there's nothing for the kids who aren't good at academic pursuits. That's what worries me most of all. As an employer, we employ a lot of young people in their early 20s. We cannot find an engineer or a tradesman anywhere. It really worries me, this obsession with computers and gadgetry and teaching these kids that it's the only thing in the world. They've got to learn things that they could do with their hands, especially boys, and do something useful. All this twiddling along. They don't even teach women, they don't even teach people to type.
Sorry, Khan.
You know, I think, I'm sorry to say, but I think that's quite an old-fashioned view. Even if you are a plumber, even if you are a corgi gasman, you still need to know how to access technology. Absolutely. All of those things are determined by that.
Absolutely.
But you know, I am absolutely all for the internet. I don't care how a child reads you know, a classic. If they want to read it on the internet,
I'm not excluding
as long as they're reading it, that's the most important thing. I think computers allows for accessibility, and some children, I mean, you know, for me, I've got an iPhone, but I don't read stuff on there. I'd rather still have a newspaper, and I think it's about giving people choice.
But it's the reliability of the resource as well, isn't it? Yeah. Alison Wheeler from Wikimedia. Not everything you read on the internet is true, is it?
A lot of it is, though. That's the point. Wikipedia, which is one of the projects from Wikimedia, 2.5 million articles in English alone. Most of those are entirely accurate, but we're a pointer, we aren't the source.
That's a big claim, most of them entirely accurate.
Yes. You walk down your street.
That's not your reputation.
It is, exactly, it's the media, I'm sorry, it's the media that do this. You walk down your street, you may see a little bit of graffiti, and it'll get cleared up. We're the same. There's little bits of problem, but they get cleared up quickly. We have people from 9 to 90, updating that because they're interested. They're almost being teachers by wanting to pass that information on. Whether it's somebody doing a project at school, I mean, it's, as you said earlier, it's that whole taking things from all parts of the curriculum to say, put these together and work from them. Somebody looks at an article on Wikipedia, they say, oh, that's wrong, I'll correct it, which is great. They're helping pass that information on. But also, they're linking through to something else and saying, oh, now I'm learning about that. Something I learned when I was young is you can't ask the right question until you know 80% of the answer. We're trying to give you that start to get you in the right direction.
I think there's a bigger challenge. I mean, first of all, this, an evening of false dichotomies, this dichotomy between the book and the computer is completely ridiculous. I mean, people need to read great books, but textbooks are not, generally speaking, great works of literature. So, you know, the fact that people can get information better from their computer than textbooks doesn't seem to me to be a crisis in our love of literature. But I think the bigger challenge about online learning is that young people are used to being able to get the information they want when they want to get it. And I find it quite interesting. People say, young people, they don't work very hard. They go home in the evening and they spend hours on PlayStation. Well, yeah, they do. But what are they doing on PlayStation? They're trying to get to higher and higher levels. So they're working at it, and they're working at a system which is very cleverly designed to give them feedback and to encourage them to go to the next level and the next level. And I think the bigger challenge for education is that as young people expect those kind of systems that give them feedback all the time, that encourage them to go to the next level, that traditional kind of standing up front of a class is harder. And in particular, it's a tough time to be a mediocre teacher. When I was a kid, I accepted mediocre teachers. You know, we were more deferential. I watched the boring bits of Blue Peter to get to the interesting bits. Young people don't now. If something's boring, they switch over. And that's why we have to think much more fundamentally, I think, about learning processes. Because if young people aren't part of that process, then I think we've got a problem. I mean, lots of issues, but one of the problems is to be order in the classroom.
Philip, here, I mean, what seems to be the case is that in certain industries, the online evolution, if you like, and revolution has transformed certain industries. It's certainly transformed what I do, probably what Matthew does, in terms of access to information. It doesn't seem to have revolutionised teaching yet.
No,
and you wonder why not.
Well, I think we are struggling with it. I think to keep children e-safe, we've tended to have a not let access policy. I'm beginning to think that's wrong for the reasons I said earlier. I think that we don't have enough kit, but as the price of technology becomes... I mean, quite soon, all the computer children will need in school is a clever one of these, and it'll log on to the wireless network, and they'll be able to get all sorts of information from it. It's not a substitute for teaching children to read and interrogate text properly. It's not a substitute for science. It's not a substitute for history. It's a way that can help these things.
And when you're all using different information sources, will you still be able to plan your lessons?
It can help children interact with each other as well as their teacher, and that's one of the great powers this information revolution offers up. It can either be used educationally very well, or we can try and block it and be very, very dismissive of it, and I think that would be a danger, because children, young people, are using this technology outside the classroom anyway, so we need to find intelligent ways of using it inside. But unless we teach them to evaluate evidence, to analyse, to read and think for themselves, it'll be complete rubbish. So those things haven't gone out of the way. This is a tool, it's not an end in itself.
Briefly, if you will, Alan Smithers.
Well, I agree with Philip. The only way you can harness all the powers that the internet gives us is if you can work out what is true and what isn't true. And this is why you need this firm grounding in the subjects. Now, living a life now actually isn't so very different from living a life 2,000 years ago. So all this talk about the 21st century seems to me that you're in danger, as that film we saw, of running away with the notion I never really understood, which is the medium is the message. As far as schooling is concerned, it's the message that's important.
OK, we're coming to the end, and I want to pose the question to you all that I began with. In the light of everything we've talked about, is the curriculum fit for the 21st century? Matthew Taylor.
Actually, I think the interesting thing is if you go around schools, there's an immense amount of innovation taking place. And I think that's what we've got to get used to. Secondary schools are big businesses. They've all got to have their own kind of R&D capacity. And the curriculum is changing, it's becoming more flexible. And I look forward to a day where every school you go to is doing slightly different things, geared to those pupils, growing out of the engagements of those pupils, and there's a system which is learning all the time and experimenting. That's what I think we need.
Sarah Khan.
I disagree with you in saying that school is business. I don't think schools are businesses. They are centres for people to learn and access information so they can go and develop their life when they leave. I think technology is fundamental for young people to take them forward and be prepared for work.
Alan Smithers.
We need a curriculum, but the one we have at the moment doesn't work properly. It is overloaded. It needs to be sorted out, and you need to work out what are the essentials, what do you allow to differ between schools. The government, sadly, hasn't gone about this in a very sensible way. It's dealt with it in 4 slices. It's dealt with the early years foundation stage. It's dealt with the Rose Review, which is separate for primary. It's rewritten the curriculum for Key Stage 3, the 11 to 14-year-olds, and it's introduced diplomas. Instead of those separate slices, we need something that gives all children a good basis for the lives that they will lead, which runs through from when they begin their schooling to when they leave qualified to go to work.
Nick Waters.
I think it's balance in all things. I think that books are beautiful things, but some of them tell fibs. I believe that the curriculum could take more account of technology than it dare, and we've got to be braver in our schools to take things forward. I think that there are teachers all over the country doing amazing things in schools because they recognise that the curriculum is not just the lessons, it's the lessons, the events, the routines, and what youngsters do after school and beyond school brought together to make sense in their lives. And I see many, many young people benefiting by becoming successful, confident and responsible people at the end of their curriculum experience. Many people who criticise it haven't read it or distort it in the telling, which just goes to prove that what's written down is not always correct. What they do need, though, young people, is to use technology to the full, whilst at the same time making, doing and mending, spending time outside and enjoying the world in which they live.
Filippo here.
Children need to leave school with a core set of values that are fit for a liberal democratic society. I think that's really important, and those haven't changed. We teach them through creating schools that embrace the whole child, teach respect, teach reconciliation, teach right from wrong, teach truth. But in terms of the content that children learn, it needs to be well grounded in the core of things we already know you need to know to be able to be an active citizen, but actually it also needs to give young people the willingness and ability to learn the answers to the questions we don't even know are going to arise, because that is what's going to happen. Different things are going to happen that throw up new questions. Our young people need to be able to find good answers to them and then good ways of living with them based on strong values.
And there we must leave it. That's it for this edition of The Big Debate. My thanks to our panel, Filippo here, Mick Waters, Professor Alan Smithers, Syra Khan and Matthew Taylor, and our audience here at the Capital City Academy. The debate on the curriculum carries on our website at teachers.tv. But from all of us here for now, goodbye.